Back at our Steve Teak project, I wanted to talk about another siding material that we're going to be using on this project. This is a duration, so it's a true exterior product. So it's the boral, which is a fly ash material, and we're using it in the nickel gap orientation. And up on the wall here in this recessed section, essentially is all nickel gap. And then you'll see it on the back as well. It has the wood grain on one side, smooth on the other, and we're putting it smooth side out. We are installing our slicker max on the wall. We have some kick out flashing on the trim there, and then everything gets installed, and they're being really intentional with their nail layout because like a traditional home, you know, a lot of times those nails weren't filled. I think we're actually gonna leave them exposed and keep that, that really traditional look. But I really appreciate the guys are keeping this up off the piece of trim here, so any moisture that does make its way down behind that can escape. But for the sake of that slicker max goes all the way behind the water table, so all that moisture is going to get out. Being really nice and neat around the windows. And the one thing that I wanted to call attention to is they're not only relying on the way this stuff is ran through the machine for that gap, because we found that gap tends to be pretty tight, because these boards are designed to have the ability to be tight. So they're actually using these 1/8 inch tile spacers to get that really consistent gapping all the way up in between each board. One thing to note about this stuff, because a lot of people have asked what it is, being that it is made out of fly ash, you're gonna wanna make sure that you're dedicating tools to cutting and manufacturing this stuff or milling this stuff in the site. A lot of times you'll hear you gotta dedicate a blade. You make one cut through this stuff with a regular blade and try to go back to wood, you'll never cut through that wood, you'll burn that blade out. But that blade will last a really long time cutting this stuff. On the front, they're working on that first gable, and that gable is gonna have brick all the way up, and where the window bump out is, it's only going to be about right underneath the window itself. This is where a lot of this brick facade facing the street, you're going to get that Tudor style. Future episode, we'll talk about how we're incorporating some of those brick details for some of our ventilation within the home. Speaking of ventilation, looking at this window bump out, that right there is going to be our ERV intake and exhaust on the other side. Mike's done a really great job. Mike's our super on this job, mapping out where all of this stuff is gonna live, all of the vents, plumbing vent. Dar Mechanical did a great job. They got everything to one plumbing vent on the back side of this house. Kitchen exhaust is tucked up on the roof in an intentional location. Our intake for our future makeup air for our kitchen exhaust is in a gable end vent on the back here. All of our bathroom fans are being exhausted into soffit details that have ventilation in it. So why am I calling attention to this is because oftentimes, especially in new builds, I'm seeing a lot of these penetrations. Boiler exhaust, for example, is a great one to call attention to, because oftentimes they're these, you know, penetrations on the sidewall that, you know, end up in locations that aren't really thoughtful. It's usually just like the shortest way to get out of the house. And I understand that you have maximums as far as how long those runs can be. And, you know, and ultimately you want that boiler to operate, you know, at its peak capacity. But, you know, for us, it has to be intentional. It can't just end up underneath a window that in the middle of winter, when that boiler is screaming, making hot water, it's gonna steam up that window. We really think about the end use for our clients. Mike was able to work with the guys at Needham Mechanical, and they were able to run that boiler exhaust rather than out the sidewall where it was originally gonna go. They were able to run that up through a closet wall and then up through the roof here back on the back side of the primary suite. Again, keeping all of these vents on the back side of the home and tucked out of the way. So you can see more nickel gap on the back side here, and they're starting to run this nickel gap up the side gable here. And one of the reasons why they've stopped is because we have our second ERV that Mike's gonna actually lay out right in line with those 1/8 inch gaps. And then having a removable piece, and our carpenters are actually going to make a piece that is slotted and fit right in between those 8 inch boards. Again, really intentional looking. As you guys know, we're using the Da Vinci multi-width slate on this project. Boston Exteriors is doing a great job. They're being extremely diligent with layout and making sure that they're getting not only an authentic look, but working through some of the authentic details with some LED flashing. A lot of you guys had asked questions about the LED flashing and how it pertains to health. So we're not cutting this stuff with anything but shears, so we're not creating any dust. And the guys are using gloves when handling it, and of course washing their hands before they're eating anything. It's also a great material for flashing, especially when it needs to be malleable in the curved valleys. We're also taping that lead and then going up the roof line, and then you have that continuous grace. But what I'm holding here is our ridge cap. So what they do is they make this cap designed to be bent over the top of a ridge, and you can actually see it's split right here, which allows it to be bent, and then you can bend that. There's a 90 degree, which would be a 12-12 pitch, and if you guys remember, some of these roofs are 17 pitch. So we had actually talked about doing a single piece and a single piece to build our proposed ridge cap in a lot of these areas, but we went back to the reps at Da Vinci and worked with them to make sure that we could use this in a way that would work on some of those steeper pitch roofs. And being that we're no longer ventilating this roof, we don't have to worry about a ridge vent underneath. So those guys are making sure that that roof is completely sealed up. Speaking of that roof, we have our chimney installed, and the masons over at EC Hathaway have done a great job. A really big, robust, traditional looking chimney, and you get that traditional, again, LED flashing coming, worked its way into all of that brick chimney and brought down long so it can be tied into the Da Vinci slate as these roofers continue to go across the roof here. And that was a big monumental part of getting this roof on, because being that it was in the center is actually stopping them from being able to work in that area. So they're getting the left side in our version here wrapped up, and then they're gonna work this way. Now, behind us, our good friends Rockwool actually stopped by just last week and delivered all of this comfort bat. So we have R23. This is going to be going in all of our exterior walls. So I talked about spraying the roof. We are going to be spraying the roof due to the complexity and just not being able to get our R value. We didn't feel comfortable putting something like this or even a blown in and still having mechanicals up there in an unventilated attic or an unconditioned attic, I should say. So the roof itself, we worked with our trade partner on making sure that that was going to be done appropriately. And then all of our walls are going to get our Rockwool R23 and all of the 2x6 exterior walls. And then we're going to be using the Siga Myrex on the inside to do our vapor barrier. So why don't we go inside? I want to show you a detail that's really important to make sure that we do get the air barrier that we're looking for when we do insulate. So on the inside, being that this will all be a bat installation in these exterior walls, and then we'll have our vapor retarder. One of the things that we do is use a gasketed outlet box or switch box, and this gives you a foam gasket here. So when we bring that membrane down to this box and get that membrane, we can use an acoustical sealant around here and make sure that this doesn't become our air leakage spot. And then they also have these little gaskets where all the wires come out. If we want to be redundant, we can come by here and put a little fire caulking on it to make sure that that is airtight. But I would argue to say that if you do have a home that's built and you don't have a gasketed box and you have a leaky wall, I bet around your outlets on your exterior walls is going to feel cold. And if you were to put maybe an infrared on it, it would be a cold spot. So we want to make sure that this right here is not allowing any air to infiltrate, even though we have that continuous WRB on the outside, which should be preventing, if not all, most of the air from infiltrating this cavity. Should anything make its way back, we don't want it to come all the way into the indoor climate. So we are working through MEPs, so mechanical, electrical, plumbing. We're getting prepped for installation, and a couple of things that you might see is all the spray paint on the floor. And our team's going around using orange to mark out any stud. We're using green to mark out any electrical, and then I believe they're using blue anytime they have plumbing. And that's just gonna let us know, once that board's up, where this stuff is located. They're able to look down really quickly and see orange line. That means I can nail my baseboard there, shoot their baseboard right there, and know exactly what's going on. And those green, that's not reflecting that this box is here, it's reflecting that this wire is going through. And this right here is actually a fire stopping caulking. We've actually moved away from the foam. You'll see it in some areas, but we stopped using it and we're using the caulking. So anytime there's a larger hole, we'll stuff it with Rockwool, and then we'll use the fire stopping caulking over that. Before any board goes up, before any insulation goes up, the guys over at Multivista, and they're gonna come in and scan this entire home in its entirety on the inside, and laser scan it. And what that laser scan is gonna do, it's gonna give us a digital twin of this home. And you're gonna say, Nick, when are you gonna ever care what's going on? When you renovate, you might not ever renovate this place. Fair enough, but we also offer home care on all our homes. So we're gonna maintain this home for, hopefully the life of the home. Say a client finishes this home and says, hey, I would really love to hang this huge piece of white oak live sawn, ledge on the wall to put all of my encyclopedias. I'm making this up as I go. And we need to make sure that that thing is anchored super well. We're not gonna run the risk of putting a screw or a lag or an anchor through plumbing because we have an understanding of what's in that wall. We do this on all of our projects. We've reverted back to them even as quickly as just a few months after someone has lived there. We're gonna walk you through that entire process in a future episode of like how we do that scan and talk more about it. We have 3 air handlers in this project. We have 2 in the basement, and 1 up in the attic. The 2 in the basement, one does the primary suite, and the other one does the rest of the first floor, and also gives the basement a zone. So both those air handlers have 2 zones, so they can control the basement separately. We can shut down that system because primarily in the summer, you don't need a lot of air conditioning in the basement. Typically it's dehumidification. But in the winter, you're gonna wanna make sure you heat both spaces. So up on the second floor, we only have 1 unit up in the attic. Now the attic will be conditioned, so that unit is up there and will feed the 4 bedrooms and the plethora of bathrooms up on the second floor. And one of the things I really wanted to point out, and that's important to us because we do maintain these homes and we do handle the maintenance of the homes, we want to reduce the things that we have to worry about. So this 1-inch PVC that's coming down here, it's left long right now, but this will actually terminate into our plumbing, our laundry box. So this right here is our drain for our washer machine. So when this washer machine gets slid in, real quick, shout out to Mike. Mike actually built this wall recessed back, so you had all of the extra room for your ductwork to come into your dryer. You could get everything nice and tight to the wall. We had that cavity to do it. Really nice detail by Mike there. But all of our plumbing drain for our washer will go into this washer, and then eventually this will come down and go into this as well. What is this? This is the condensate drain for our air handler up in the attic. It's got a pan under it, so that pan also will have a drain that ties into this. The nice part is we don't need a pump because that machine is located above our laundry and we can use gravity to our advantage. So that comes down here, goes into our laundry drain. We don't have to worry about it. Now, oftentimes in the basement, we would have to have pumps because those are at the lowest point in the basement. Here, Mike was actually able to work with the guys at Needham Mechanical and was able to locate those units in areas that allowed the drain to be gravity fed into our 2 sump pits. Great detail. Yes, pumps are fine, they work fine. There's nothing wrong with using them, but it's again, one of those things that if we can be a little bit more intentional and avoid using a pump, it's one less thing to go wrong, it's one less thing to fail, it's one less thing to back up, it's one less thing to overflow or leak or cause a spill on the floor. We've eliminated that entirely, and we've put 1 unit at the far end, 1 unit closer to the garage, and those gravity feed down into the sump pit. Great detail. Again, thinking about being intentional with everything that we do, one of our core values, that is what we are all about. And as we go through this home, I just completed a walkthrough today in our meeting, and some of the things that I really appreciated was the intentionality behind ductwork. Not only is it centered above the window, they've also went around and spray painted the inside of that ductwork black. So when you put a grill on that, you're not seeing the shiny sheet metal through that grate. So it's centered on the window, and Mike's done a good job of laying everything out within all of the spaces to have intentionality. And also another core value is collaboration. And that's not just done with where Mike's walking around saying, do this, do that. He's working with the team. He's working with the electrician, the plumber, mechanical contractor, contractor to make sure stuff's in the right spot. Things like this, we have our sub panel here in the homework loft, working with the electrician as to where does this make sense to be? And, you know, let's put it in a location that is aesthetically pleasing, out of the way, but easy to access, where this room, you know, is kind of a secondary room, and it will be tucked here behind, you know, a wall rather than in a hallway. You know, some might say, well, why wouldn't you put it in the laundry room? We actually don't have room in the laundry room. We have drying racks on the wall. We have cabinetry on the wall. We have all of these things that we just didn't have the code compliant room. So this worked out perfect, and it's out of the way and considerate. Working with the mechanical contractor, we have these inline fans, and I heard that one of them is going to end up in here, and what we'll end up doing is having an access panel here so it's serviceable. And again, going back to our home care program, you know, we're going to know that that's there. We're going to know what model that is, what it requires. The only way we can do that is by having the information up front, by working with a great team such as Mike and Liz on this project, and making sure all of this information is documented in a way that's not only helpful for construction, but it's also prepping the home care side of our business for completion. Not only is it valuable for the homeowner, but it's also valuable for us, where we're investing all this time to build this beautiful home. We want this home to be beautiful. More on the home care later. If you guys have questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. A great update over here in Needham. Lots of great work. I'm excited to see us at this phase. We'll share with you how we go about scanning this place. We'll even give you an inside look at what that scan looks like after the fact and even during the process. But until then, appreciate you guys watching. Stay tuned for the next site visit.